Sunrise Interviews is brought to you by Valley Strong Credit Union.
Welcome back. The time now is 6:17. Following the death of George Floyd, people took to the streets with protests and sometimes riots. Images flooded the news of people crying, shouting, being arrested. Your children may have questions, and experts say this is a good starting point for an important conversation about race and justice. Joining us now to talk about how to have that discussion, Jessica Burzloff, a licensed marriage and family therapist. Jessica, good morning. Thanks for joining us once again here on Sunrise.
Hi, Maddie. Thanks so much for having me. As the events of the past week have really shown us, it's important that we start having these discussions about race with our children and starting early. You know, we as parents have the power to change the way a generation views this topic, and it starts with addressing it and acknowledging it.
How early should this conversation begin?
So I do want to acknowledge right here at the top that I am a white woman and a white mother. So I've had the privilege of not having to have to give this topic a whole ton of thought. I don't have to worry that my sons one day are going to be killed because of the color of their skin. So I just want to acknowledge that up top. But the reality is that kids as young as 2.5 are already noticing differences, racial differences among their peers and among the people in their lives. So it's really never too early to start this conversation or to start exposing kids to stories of people of diverse backgrounds. That's really where it starts.
And you're saying this isn't necessarily something that at 2.5 we start talking about the protests and the violence across our country or police brutality specifically, but it starts much simpler than that with these stories.
Right. It starts with really paying attention to what we're exposing our children to, what kind of media, what kind of people are in their lives. We want to make sure that we're exposing them to a diverse background of TV and music and television and movies and books that star characters from all kinds of backgrounds, and also making sure that people in our lives don't all just look like us, right? And again, as a white person, I am certainly not the expert on race. It is something I don't have to think a lot about, fortunately for me, but I do want to encourage viewers to check out the website. There's going to be a lot of resources listed there if they're interested in pursuing this, that they can, lists of books they can read to their children and things like that.
You know, and I think a lot of people, especially when they have very young children, just assume, well, kids don't notice race. But you say that's not really true.
No, they notice everything. I don't know how many times have parents been in the grocery store and their kid makes a seemingly rude, blatant comment about somebody that they witness. Kids notice all kinds of differences. And the idea here is not to turn a blind eye to it or shush them or make them feel like that's not okay to acknowledge or talk about. What we want to do is celebrate diversity, celebrate the fact that people, look different and have different cultures and different things to offer, but that we're all people at the end of the day. But being colorblind or race neutral has gotten us nowhere. We have to address these differences head on and not make them scary or bad, but just acknowledge that they exist.
Absolutely. And you mentioned also that educating yourself is a big part of this whole process. It doesn't have to necessarily start with one-on-one, you and your kids. Get yourself in a good place first.
Absolutely. And I would encourage any viewers right now who maybe are uncomfortable by what I'm saying or bristling at what I'm saying to really interrogate those feelings and question them objectively why this is uncomfortable, why race is an uncomfortable topic, particularly for white people to address. And it really, people of color, Black mothers, have been having these conversations with their kids forever. Mothers of people of color, they don't get to opt out of this conversation. And so for the rest of us, it's a matter of life and death that we start to talk about this with our kids. We cannot be blind to this anymore. And that starts with us and our own biases and our own prejudices that we have to wrestle with and acknowledge and overcome.
For me, so my oldest is 6 right now. My youngest is 3.5. But they haven't really come to me with a lot of questions. So how can I make this a part of our conversations in a natural way?
Right. What I do with my son, my older son, of course, my baby doesn't notice this stuff so much yet, but my older son, we read a lot of books We talk a lot about the stories that we're hearing. You know, stories build empathy. Stories allow us to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody else. And so as we're reading books and as we're telling these stories, I'll stop and I'll just ask them, what do you think about that? Or do you think that's right? Or do you think, you know, how do you think about that topic? And about a variety of things, not just race, but certainly all kinds of different topics. Books, in our family, books are the best way into these difficult conversations, especially with little ones.
Okay, all right, some great advice there. Jessica Bursloff, thanks for weighing in this morning. We really appreciate you. Some great tips and ideas. I'm definitely going to go out and grab some of these stories, you know, that I can read in my own home with my own kids. So I appreciate you.
Excellent. Thanks. And I want to again remind viewers that we'll have a list of resources on the website later this morning.
Okay, wonderful. Check that out, kget.com. 6:23 is the time now.